Welcome everybody, my name is Jeffrey St Laurent and this is the Tuesday Live Show, and today we talk about something interesting, saying about developing patience for creating results in our business, because results do not happen quickly, regularly, at will, oftentimes enough, etc. And so there must be a vast amount of patience for what we do in developing results and creating results. I believe that's a skill that we can develop. It's everyone has patience, but it's developing that over time. Patience is also a mindset. I want to talk about that a little bit today because it's an important aspect of what we do as coaches. Because if we're going to be doing this long term, that's the only way we're actually going to be able to realize the results that we're looking for. And so I believe we're developing patience and talking about that skill set and seeing it as a skill set is worth a conversation today. I want to talk about some of the things that I've done to develop that patience, because it's definitely something that it's a skill to be mastered. So with that being said, I do record all of these Tuesday Live shows. I put them in my university at sellingcoaching.com. Check that out. I help coaches transition to a full-time business. I can help you in any way that you need. I have some great resources, like I said, on my website in the university. If you want to start off at sellingcoaching.com, right on the homepage, if you enter your name and email address, that's going to get you instant access to an audio recording that I did called the Launching Your Coaching Business, the First 3 Vital Steps. Great resource for you if you want to start off there. And then also I've got some other great resources. Right now, I have a couple spots open for some one-on-one mentoring. If you're in a position where you really feel like you might require some assistance and guidance moving forward, the timing's right for you, go to sellingcoaching.com and fill out the form at the bottom of the Work With Me page. I'm going to give you a call. We're going to chat. We're going to see where you're at, and we can decide where to go from there. With that being said, let's talk about patience. Let's talk about patience in creating results. And again, this isn't just an easy like, oh, you got to have patience, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, yeah, we can say that. But I want to talk about patience today as a skill set. And I want to talk about it as a skill set that you can develop and work at. It's a conscious thing. And if you followed me for any amount of time, you might have heard me say repetitively that it's not necessarily about consistency in this business. It's consistency over time. That's the key. Consistency over time. Consistency in what? Consistency in the daily activities that we must be able to do in order to reach out and grow our network and expand to get in front our message in front of more people and following up and going from there, right? So it's new connections, it's following up with those, and it's the repetitiveness of staying in front of our audience. Like those are some of our, quickly I'm going through some of our main activities that we've got to be doing to grow our business in terms of, opening up our opportunities through networks. Now, with that being said, everybody that I've ever worked with as my mentor coach, in my groups that I offer, my one-on-one stuff that I do, results don't happen overnight. I've had people create some great results. I've created some great results, but they've all taken time. And in most cases, I'll say this, in all cases, they always take more time than the person hopes, wants, or anticipates. There's some cases where someone might create good results quickly, very rare, quickly. Like, they start off, we start doing some marketing, and I get a call or the next session, they're like, guess what? I got my first client, or I just got a couple clients, And then a couple weeks later, like, I got 2 more clients, but then there might be a lull after that, right? That's just what happens sometimes. Regardless of that, in order to have a sustainable long-term business, we need consistency over time. And we can't expect the results in our business to be happening at a pace that we most likely want them, and sometimes need them to happen. We don't want to have a need. We don't, I can't need someone to hire me. However, with that being said, I want you to start thinking about patience as a skill to develop, because it's the way we think about what we're doing. I'll share some of the things that have helped me over the years develop a patience, because people have always told me, and I feel like I have a vast amount of patience. I don't feel like I'm just lucky. Like, you're, some people are good at something, etc. Like, I don't feel like I'm just good at having patience. I see it in my dad a lot. I don't know if I learned that from him as well, but I get frustrated just like everybody else. I have I'm a very competitive person, outwardly against others, not like in a business per se, but like, sports, athletics, etc. Very competitive, competitive with myself and others. But in business, I'm competitive in the sense that I always want to do better and grow and push. And and so I can get very frustrated when things don't go the way I want to or don't happen in a certain time frame. But I very quickly realized that having done life for as long as I have, right, and still a baby in some instances, right. But the point is that I realized if I'm gonna stay in the game, I've got to start learning and working on my ability to be patient, and it's very helpful because, as you know, this we're talking about business right now, but I mean, reflect this on any aspect of your life. And if you don't have patience there, then you wind up getting frustrated. I played a round of golf this morning. Like every every shot I take, some are good, some are bad, but the second you hit a bad shot, you got to have patience. You got to breathe through it because, otherwise it throws the rest of the hole off or the rest of the round off. It's a skill set you work at. And so I want you to start recognizing, first off, there's a couple of things I'll go into here. Is number one, start to recognize where you're getting impatient. Or sorry, let me reverse that. When you're getting impatient. So you've got to recognize your impatience. So in other words, when you're impatient in that moment, you've got to be like, all right, this frustration, this anger, this whatever this emotion is, this is actually me being impatient with something. Well, let's just talk about your business right now, right? I've been making calls, I've been doing something, I've been reaching out to people, and nothing's happening. No one's getting back to me. I'm frustrated, right? That's a level of impatience. So first, we've got to recognize when it's happening to create an awareness of that. And oftentimes, because I came from a health fitness background, obviously personal training, but then as I started off coaching, I really started talking about mind-body, the mind-body connection. How how we think about influences how we feel influences how we think. It's a two-way street. The connection between mind and body is breath. When you take a deep breath and relax, you can feel yourself calming. Your heart rate, actually, there's a physical response when you diaphragmatically breathe. There's a nerve that runs through the diaphragm that actually, when you breathe, you can feel your pulse actually physically slow down. There's a calming effect when you do deep breathing. And so those are some of the things that I've adopted, is taking those deep breaths, having my heart rate slow down, get in that moment. And now that I know I'm frustrated with something, I put it on my impatience. Because of why? It's because of an expectation I have. It's because of something that's not happening, or I want it to go a certain way and it's not happening that way, or I can't control it, or it is what it is, taking longer than I thought or wanted or expected. So I calm myself and I recognize my impatience. And then I start to look at, well, what is it I'm impatient about? What is it specifically that I'm impatient about? And I guess you could call this coaching, right? I'm coaching myself through it. And hey, we're all coaches, but oftentimes it can be challenging to coach ourselves through this. But that's exactly what I'm asking you to be able to do, right? So recognize the impatience. And then now that you recognize you're impatient, you've got to start to ask yourself, what is it that I'm impatient about? What is it about this situation or event or lack of results, etc., that's causing this frustration and level of impatience? And that's when you've got to be able to put things in perspective, and you've got to have a bigger picture in terms of where you're going. You've got to understand why you're going there, why it's important. And in a couple of shows ago, I forget what it was, but one of the things I talked about was having micro whys. You might have heard of the book Begin with Why, or Start with Why, by Simon Sinek. He's got a great podcast, by the way, I've been listening to. But either way, he really talks about, starting with why. You've got to have a big why, to go after what you want to go after. Otherwise, the first roadblocks, they just block you up. When you have a big enough why, you can get through anything. What I've often found in a day-to-day business perspective, which gets us through, which is also lending itself to the topic of patience today, is I've got to have a lot of micro whys. Micro whys to me are a little thing that's going to get me through this next little barrier. Because sometimes my big why, my big why is to be a part of people's success. Beyond coaching, beyond anything I've ever done as a professional, and I'll just stay with that as a professional, whether it be in the fitness industry or coaching, et cetera, and the many hats I've worn as a coach, as a mentor coach now. It ultimately boils down to me being a part of people's successes. That's why I do what I do. Like if I can work with you as a mentor coach, or as I was a personal trainer, or as a life coach, or things that I've done there, and I can help you succeed, I feel like I'm a part of that success. And that's my why. But that big why doesn't get me through, I got to write this email today. Or, I've got to, follow up with these clients, or I've got to follow up with these people, or I've got to, do a show and then, do some editing and then post it, or something else that maybe I'm not in the mood for, or just whatever, it's taking time, or whatever the case is, right? Oh, I can't go to my bigger why, right? So I can become impatient with that stuff. And so I've got to have micro whys along the way. It's like, oh, well, I've got to get this done because when this is done, my family's going over to my brother's house and we're going to have dinner. And then when we're going to get back late, this needs to get done today and I'm not going to do it then. So I've got 30 minutes to get this done. That's a micro why, right? That gets me through. That gets me through the next little activity that I might be procrastinating on, or whatever's happening and how I'm feeling. But also those micro whys are going to help me through and gather and what's the word I'm looking for? Gather, I'll just say create more patience in a moment when I recognize that I'm impatient. I understand why I'm impatient. And then I start to go back to, well, why is this important? So if I'm reaching out to people and no one's getting back to me, in other words, I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to do and I'm not seeing any result, I've got to go back to, okay, what's a micro why? Micro why is like, okay, well, I know and I trust that this is the right activity. And especially, it's easier for me to say that because I've been doing it for so long. If you're doing this by yourself, you might be doing an activity and you might be doing a lot of it and nothing's happening or no desirable result. You might not be in a position right now unless you're working with someone like myself who can say, no, so-and-so, you're doing the right thing. Keep going, right? I can't tell you how many times I've got to reassure my clients, like, listen, and I'll tell them ahead of time if I know, listen, here's what I probably expect. But you're doing the right thing. You've got to trust this. With everything I've ever done, you're doing the right thing. But if you're doing this by yourself, you might not be able to trust that you're doing the right thing. So that's why it's important to, that have other people that, mentors like myself, et cetera, that can walk you through some of those items to help reinforce that. But with that being said, you've got to, even if you're not sure if it's the right thing, you've got to commit to something. You've got to commit to an activity, because what I found is everyone has unless you're way out in left field, whatever that means, right? You're just not aware about anything. I think everyone has a really good idea. Most coaches have a good idea about what they need to do in order to get potential business. And I think if we posed a little poll or a little questionnaire that said, okay, of the following activities, which one or ones are most likely to get you business? And I were to give you a multiple choice answers, and I were to say, working on your website, creating a blog post, picking up the phone and calling, someone to set up an event, directly connecting with someone on social media to make a connection and, network with them. I would imagine most, if not everybody, would select and say, okay, working on my website's not going to really get me any clients. Very indirectly, right? But if you're saying which are the top two, it's the getting on the phone. It's the stuff that scares you the most. Creating a blog post, it's really not going to get you a client. I'm not going to say it can't lead to a client, but my first two examples they're not going to get you anywhere, right? But so in other words, I think we have a pretty good idea of what we need to do to get out there. And what I'm saying is if you're doing an activity and it's registering or it's congruent with in terms of, I really believe this is something that's going to get me out there because I'm exposing myself to new people and it's hard and it's challenging and I'm pushing myself. Okay, commit to it, go after it. Do it again. You've got to do it again, and then start to look at what you're doing. And if maybe you need some guidance from there to tweak, how to improve that. But that's where I want you to be able to conjure up, to create this patience, to be able to stay on it. You've got to stay on it. And you know what? I've asked my clients, I've talked with people. I've got a group going on right now, and a couple of the people, one person came to the group the other day, and they were going to do a course, and they set everything up, they promoted it, and no one signed up. And I could just tell by their energy that they really didn't put everything into the promotion of it. Like they almost did it. Half of them didn't want anyone to sign up because they were scared, and half of them kind of wanted someone to sign up. But it wasn't like, I'm all in, I want people to sign up, and I'm going to promote it like that. And I kind of called them out a little bit on it. I'm like, I could be wrong, but I'm getting the sense that you kind of didn't go in on this thing all in. You kind of just, you did it to go through the motions, to say, I promoted my event and see, I got nobody. It's probably what you expected anyways. It's probably what you were secretly hoping for and wanting because you were nervous and they're like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I'm like, all right, so now you know. Now you know why it happened. And it doesn't mean if you went all in, you would have gotten anybody. But sometimes that's a scary premise, the premise of going all in and committing and then getting nothing on the other end. However, what I'm here to tell you is that's where this patience aspect comes in. Working this as a skill set is because you've got to conjure up and start to create that patience to keep going with it and going and going and going, even when you're getting nothing, or especially when you're getting nothing, and also recognizing that you've got to be doing this for months. And hey, you're doing something for 3 months and nothing's happening. Yeah, let's run this by. Let me run my eyes over it, right? Let me start to help you a little bit and see, like, I've had people that I've worked with that have come to me and like, Jeff, I've been doing this for a year now and nothing. And I'm like, well, tell me what's going on. And I'm like, all right, so I'm not going to say your whole plan is a fail. What I'm saying, you've got the right start to it. But then I said, there's some things that we can follow through and tweak and improve, and or the approach, we can go in from a different angle with the same concept, and we start refining those things. And guess what? 2-3 months later, they're like, wow, this is, that even if they haven't gotten business yet, they're like, wow, I'm getting responses now. And right, so there's something to be said about having, someone like myself to guide you with that. But regardless of that, if you're doing something, like, you've got to stick with it, you've got to go after that. And that's where that patience is vitally important. And so really, hopefully, if you can start to take away from today, is start recognizing that it's a skill set. It's something that everyone has patience. It's not like, people like, oh, I'm an impatient person. Okay, so what? It doesn't mean you have the inability to have patience. No, it does not. You're consciously choosing that's now your MO, and you're an impatient person, so you just go with it, and you just rationalize to yourself when you're impatient, and maybe everyone else around you, that's just how you roll. But it's not getting you anywhere. If your impatience is not serving you, then it's not good. There's also something to be said about a level of impatience that serves us. So as I said, like, it doesn't, just because I have a vast amount of patience that I've been able to develop and learn in terms of how I can create that for myself, I also have a vast amount of impatience. And I also understand that impatience serves me because it pushes me. I just know when to blend it and dial it back, where the impatience can now let me allow that to start to push me forward, because it's driving me and it forces me forward to accomplish a lot in a small amount of time. But then if I'm not achieving the types of or end results that I was going for, that's when I've got to start dialing back in my patience to say, okay, well, what's going to go on? All right, how do I kind of shift my perspective, take a deep breath so I can go back to the impatience part to kind of keep driving me forward, right? Because if my impatience drives me forward to a certain point, but then it stops me because I'm frustrated, overwhelmed, pissed off, and I'm like, or quit, even if it's for a day or a week or even a couple hours, when maybe I was a couple actions or calls away from a yes or from a result. That's the difference. It's the classic stories you hear in personal development. I have a couple on top of my head, but I'm not going to go through them right now, where it's just like, you stop a few feet short of the gold, and the next thing you know, someone picks up where you left off and digs a few more feet and finds the gold. Like, That's the way it is. And those are the micro whys that I would get through is like, well, what if this next call, what if this next email was my next client? What if this next, reach out was the person who, connected me with somebody that, gave me a seminar or put me in front of some new people. Like those are the little things we've got to share I do in my head that'll keep me going when I'm frustrated. I know I'm not this magical person that just, I've got it all figured out. And like, I've got to do all this stuff too. I've had more of a level of mastery to it because I've been doing it for 17 years now, right? But it doesn't mean I win all the time. It's just that's where when I work with my clients and my groups and one-on-one, I share some of that stuff wherever possible. It's like, well, here's what I'm doing, here's what I did, because I want people to start to see like, just because I'm doing it a certain, probably a while longer, it doesn't mean all the stuff I'm teaching you ever stops. We've got to continue with that. And that's my message for you today. So